Hello, everyone. Welcome to Angela and Karie Talk to Each Other. We have a third person today. Natalie is joining us. She is a legal recruiter and attorney here in Phoenix, Arizona. So welcome and thanks for coming on our show. I don't even know what this is.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Our chat. So the reason Natalie came on was because like over the last month that we've been doing this, both Angela and I have been receiving calls just with all different types of questions and comments. And Natalie came to us and said that she wanted to talk to the point of intention. And in our conversations throughout the last couple of weeks, I would say something like, well, it's not my intention to do this. And she has an amazing analogy to explain why that could be offensive to someone as well. And we were just kind of talking before we got on here, and she's just got some great perspective. So welcome and thank you for coming here and being vulnerable with all of us.
Thank you. Well, and it's funny because I called it. So Angela is my business coach. Highly recommend her, by the way. She's
I'm in.
fantastic. Huge fan. And so I just love talking to her. So I called her because I've been watching and impressed with your conversations. And so I called her just to chat. And then she said, would you be willing to maybe come on and talk? And so I'm honored that you guys have asked me to come on, and I'm excited to be here to chat.
Yeah, talk about it all.
Yeah.
So,
Natalie,
we're going to talk about intent versus the impact that it makes. So maybe we can start with you sharing the analogy that you shared earlier.
So, and this is a commonly used analogy that's used kind of throughout law, and I've seen it used in many places with this specific topic. So I would love to take credit, but it would be inappropriate. So I think of it sometimes like so Angela, you shared a couple experiences. Angela and Karie, you both shared experiences of corrections that you've received or given when it comes to race or topics or just professional interactions where a correction might be needed. And I've been having a lot of those conversations with family members of like, oh, we've done it this way and this might be problematic and causing harm. And one of the first things I heard in your conversations, but also this isn't just you guys, I think this is across the board. One of the very first things that we often hear when there's a correction given is, well, that was not my intention. And as an attorney, I think it's really important to recognize like there is intention, but there can still be an impact, even if there's not the intent to have an impact. So for example, in an analogy of a car crash, if I'm driving down the road and I hit somebody with my car, it doesn't matter a lot if I did it purposely or accidentally. It matters in terms of criminal proceedings, but I still hit somebody with my car. Even if I didn't mean to do it, they are still hurt, potentially bleeding, but and I need to make sure that I'm giving them my focus and attention. It would be inappropriate for me to get out of my car and say, you shouldn't be hurting because I did not mean to hurt you. Or, I need you to focus on me. This is really upsetting. I did not mean to hit you. And this was an accident. And, this has been really upsetting for me. No, like the person on the ground is the one that we should be focusing on and making sure that they have the appropriate attention, maybe medical attention, to make sure that they're okay. But I think we're really concerned about what that means for us. We don't want people to think that we're bad people. And as humans, oftentimes we shift the focus back to us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I love that. And you think about it, we're having, the world right now is having all of these, having so many different conversations around race, around discrimination, but then also importantly, how do we begin to come together? And so I love the analogy because and we talked a little bit about this coming on, but how it's really shifting back to the person that is potentially hurt, and not necessarily focusing on ourselves internally. Because I think that that's really what has gotten us to the place that we are today, is that we're self-centered in so many cases, right? And so we're focused on us and how people are perhaps in that moment perceiving us, instead of focusing on the other person and just listening and figuring out how can we change the trajectory of our relationship. And so I think just having that deeper dive into, conversations is what's important. And so prior to us coming on, Natalie, you had shared that people give us correction because they trust us and they care enough about us to want us to change and to want us to be better or to be different. And so it's really up to us to take ownership of it and not become defensive. And so, let's talk a little bit about that. So how we move from having this conversation of, oh, you know what, from listening. So the first time someone says, oh, oh, perhaps maybe this was offensive. So how do we move from having that conversation of, oh, it wasn't my intent, to really leaning in and beginning to have that open dialogue?
I personally, I've been trying to practice more. Just like with little kids, I've got toddlers, so teaching them like stop, drop, and roll. Like when things happen in the moment, they can be upsetting, and we can kind of go on like autopilot in our reactions. So I think it's important that we practice being corrected. So like I literally will visualize, okay, if somebody were to come up to me and say, wow, this has really hurt me, or you did this thing, how am I going to respond? First, and again, this is my own little personal thing. I make sure that like I feel okay with myself. Okay, I remind myself you're a good person, but that doesn't mean that you can't make mistakes, and that doesn't mean you can't hit people with your car. But that's your own thing. Now you need to focus on them. And then I try to make sure that I'm listening. And even if somebody approaches me in anger, like to me, I try to code anger as this person feels really passionately, or they are really hurt. And I need to put the focus on them and really listen and engage and not make it about me. And I really have to think about that almost daily in order to respond well when those things happen.
Okay, nice. Karie, what are your thoughts? Kind of quiet.
I was just thinking, because we, like I said, we had the conversation before and about trust and reciprocating the trust. And you trusted me when I called you and said, I feel like I want to just talk to you. And the weird thing throughout the last couple of weeks is that what I've realized is, we talked about this too, is it is not your responsibility to educate me either. Mm-hmm. So I wonder also how you got past that point of like, it's not my job to educate Karie on this, but you did. And I feel like some great things have come out of this. Why? Like, why?
I feel like there's a scripture, and I think it's a scripture, but iron sharpens iron. And don't ask me where it is. But, but really, I believe that we grow together. Mm-hmm. And by the mere fact that you were willing to have this open discussion and you wanted to learn, I feel like that gave me permission to be truthful with you, to be open and to be honest. And I think that as a society, we have moved away from that, the brutal honesty of being in relationship with each other. And so to Natalie's point, we've gotten to the point where it's just like, whoa, that offended me, so I don't want to talk to you anymore. It wasn't my intent. And so we now we get defensive instead of, again, leaning in. And so I think that a lot of times when we, especially for the people who want to further the conversations, I think that we have to begin to ask open and making it about us. I facilitate like leadership training and culture training. I talk about the 5 human truths. And so we all want to belong. We all want a sense of control. We all want to be understood. We want to reach our potential. We want to feel special. And so even in those moments where something might be a little bit offensive, you can just say, hey, what is it? What caused the offense? And then that way you're not saying it wasn't my fault. Right. You're asking a question, hey, what caused the offense? And then you can listen to the person's response. Well, when you said that, I felt like I was insignificant. Or when you said that, I felt like I was kind of beneath you, or whatever the case might be, whatever they're going to regurgitate, right? And so now you can say, oh, wow, I made that person feel like they weren't special.
Mm-hmm.
And now you can begin to tap into their human needs of being special. And so, I think that if we want to continue to have these conversations, sometimes we have to look beyond the semantics, because we do talk about, we talked a little bit about semantics on the front end, and be willing to really open up, ask those questions without the defense, which I think is what Natalie brought to the table today, is like, how do we now remove the defensiveness and really start playing, start being conversational and moving each other forward.
Right.
Angela, I loved it in our conversation how you talked about how like a lot of US spaces are not built for Black people. I'm in hiring, and I can say that the numbers in the legal industry are not reflecting what the population is in terms of the way that power is structured and the way professional spaces are built. Yeah. And so for somebody to come and give correction, especially if it's a Black colleague or a brown colleague and they're coming and giving that correction, that can be very difficult and stressful and kind of a traumatic thing in itself. Mm-hmm. And so I think when that does happen, we need to recognize like, wow, this person really trusts me enough that they're doing this. Mm-hmm. And I need to, like you were saying, Karie, like I need to show that trust was well placed.
Right. I love that. And I'm going to share my screen quickly. Let's hope this works. But I wanted to show you guys this. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
The picture of the faces? Okay. So I wanted to show you to this because I was going through Instagram and I ran across this, and it talks about this is kind of the epitome of being Black in corporate America. So oftentimes when we get home, it goes on to say, I don't know if you can read it, but it goes on to say how it can be exhausting and draining, because so many times we are taught to conform. We show up in these spaces and we wonder, I'll speak for myself as a Black woman. I wonder, can I even fit in? And so what I was sharing before is that, I have to look for that face that's welcoming me into the crowd. I look for that person that's going to open up and say, yes, or, just that quick smile tells me I'm here, I'm welcome. And, when I was in corporate America, it was very difficult for my voice to be heard, because now I'm fighting against, do I belong? I'm fighting against whether or not people actually see me. I shared a couple of weeks ago on a different platform that so many times I walk into a networking event, I'll introduce myself and I'll share what I do. The first thing that people want to know is, well, what are your credentials? But then in the same breath, they turn to a white counterpart that might do something very similar, same introduction, but they're making introductions to someone else in the room to connect them. Mm-hmm. And so why do I have to share my credentials versus my white counterparts don't? And so it's this notion that, again, I have to be better. I have to, I can't walk in genuinely as myself. I have to make sure that everybody else is comfortable with me before I can get to the space to where people are now networking and connecting me with their counterparts.
I want to validate that, because I see that on a hiring site as well. Like resumes can look the same, but people tend to be drawn to people that look like them. And that's another place where intent comes in. Well, it's not a bad intention. I just feel more connection with this person, but it still has really harmful impacts in terms of who gets jobs and who gets opportunities. And, even just the way that women wear their hair, men and women, in professional settings, oftentimes, professional codes of like dress in workplaces that are on the books really discriminate and see Black hairstyles that are natural as outside of the norm and not professional, which can have really dramatically painful consequences on people. We're going back to that mask concept. Like you can't even show up the way you are. You have to go through like chemical processes in order to be accepted professionally.
I worked at a company, and in their handbook, it said that your hair could only be straight. You couldn't wear braids. It couldn't be too, I can't remember the word that it used, but ultimately it couldn't be an afro. It couldn't be an afro. Like it had to be tamed, you know? And so like, even that is in and of itself. Now you're telling me that I have to conform to what you are. And my hair doesn't go straight. Like, you know, yeah, like you said, chemical process. My hair is a fro, you know? And so it's just, you know, some of those nuances that are meant to create perhaps maybe a more conformed environment are very discriminatory. So, yeah.
Well, and just to go off of that, like when we then see natural hair as white people, black natural hair, sometimes people are like, wow, what's this? And I think that again, that goes back to intent, because people might not realize like that's super offensive, because even and it's a reminder of like pain, right? Like at least in talking to some of my black friends, they've expressed that when people do that, it's not only making them feel like they don't belong and that they're freaks and that they, you know, people can come into their personal space and not treat them with respect and be professional, but it also is a reminder of how they don't belong. And it's a reminder of a system that's been set up that doesn't allow them to be themselves. And so there can be layers, not for everybody, but layers of kind of discomfort, disrespect, and pain.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we talked a little bit about that last week, right, Karie? And you know what I forgot to do was I forgot to provide the link, and I'll do that this week in this one. But don't touch my hair. But to your point, we do some. Yes, it is offensive. It is very offensive. Or your hair didn't look like that last week. You know, I'm extremely versatile. Today I have on a wrap. Tomorrow my hair might be out in a fro. The next day it might be in braids. I'm extremely versatile, right? But it doesn't mean that it needs to be commented on all the time, you know? And so ultimately, and I'll speak from ultimately, I just want to be me. However I show up, I want to be wholly me. I want to be accepted without the stares, without wondering who I am. I had this one guy who told me, it was a networking event. He told me, had I not told him my credentials, he never would have even, how did he say it? He said, if you had not told me your credentials, I never would have, he didn't say talk to me, but I never would have taken you serious. I never would have taken you serious. And so, you know, so it's interesting, you know, we could have had that conversation. I could have dove in a little bit deeper to ask more questions, you know, and maybe it's the stigma of coaching in the name, not quite sure. But, you know, I think the stat is in 20 seconds, we draw a conclusion of a person before they even say anything. And so, you know, I would just say for everyone that's listening, you know, in those 20 seconds, perhaps maybe instead of drawing a conclusion, like negative conclusions, or maybe, or if you're focused on something that might be perceived as different, then maybe look at what biases you have that's really driving the stigmas or the assumptions about the person that's in front of you. White, Black, Asian, Mexican, it doesn't matter. Just maybe ask yourself what's causing the thoughts that you're having about that person. And then seek to remove any seek not to validate what you're thinking. Seek to not validate it. Did that make sense? I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. Karie, you are quiet. What is up?
It's a lot. And I also like keep coming back to, and it makes it too elementary, but like, it's what you learned in freaking kindergarten. It's be kind and treat everyone as a human, like and we're all different, and that's okay. And it's a beautiful thing. It's a whole tapestry. Or is that how you said it in the first time we spoke?
You said that tapestry. No, you know, it was one of the ladies that dropped a comment.
Yes.
Bill, thank you.
Bill, I will
thank you.
her. She's a woman of the company too. But yeah, I just, all the conversations I've had, it comes back to just be nice. Like, why are we here? I'm frustrated, and I'm like, I want to be a happy tapestry. And I want to be able to hear it all and take it all in, and I want it to, grow and be better.
Yeah. And I love that image of the two children that are running towards each other.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that.
One black boy, one white boy.
Mhm.
And so, you think about it, we're ultimately, when we're first born, we're taught to love. We're really taught to see people
Mhm.
and not to see color. And so where we have our biases, it's because we're taught to see color. And
Right.
so now we're deprogramming ourselves to see the people, to see the love in them. And that's all we want. We just
Right.
want, everybody just wants to be loved.
Exactly.
Love and light, Karie.
Love and light.
Light.
That's our thing. Oh, should we wrap it up with a comment I saw? And we'll talk about this next week about privilege.
Okay.
And all the different privileges. So it was by the co-founder of Black Lives Matter in Toronto, Janaya Khan. Privilege isn't about what you've gone through. It's about what you haven't had to go through. And so it goes back to that whole intent comment and all of that. It's like, keep learning, everybody. Love and light. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Karie.
Not your last time. You're welcome. Hope it's not your last time. I hope we see you again.
Yeah. It's fun to have extra people. All right. Take care, guys.
Thank you.
All right.